This is Art Television.
Okay, so here we go. So there are many causes which create what we call fear, anxiety in our mind, and it manifests in our body and causes us a lot of difficulty and problems in our life. We used to see that even when believe it or not, I was a school teacher for 1 year. And being a school teacher, you can see that some of the children who I used to try and encourage, they thought they were hopeless at doing things. It wasn't they were hopeless, they were just afraid of being judged and criticized. And so because of that, whenever there was any type of test, either like a written test or an oral test, or just being asked a question, they would clam up and they would not answer because of fear. Because that anxiety was so strong, they thought they couldn't do certain things, certain subjects. And I've seen that for many times in my life, even monks who I've grown up with when they were very young, and see them they said they never did well at school, they never went to university, and I thought, why? Because they were obviously very intelligent young men and young women. Why? And a lot of the times it was simply because somebody embarrassed them. And when they were embarrassed in front of the class, they never wanted to do that anymore, so they just disengaged for what should really be the joy of learning. And when I saw that so many times, and so many incredible young men, especially because I was a monk, who could have done so well in life if they just had a little bit more encouragement. So they weren't afraid anymore, not afraid of failure. And of course, one of those young people who I saw was one of the students I had in my class when I was a school teacher. And of course, can you hear okay? Okay. Of course, the teachers the year before, they told me that this boy had come bottom of the class in maths. And I was the fellow who had to teach him maths that year. And so, having heard he'd come bottom the year before, I wanted to see if I could teach him, encourage him, to see whether that was just the fact he couldn't do maths or whether there was something else at fault there. So every day when I taught him something in maths, that I would always go by his desk and ask him, did you understand that? Have you really seen what we're trying to show you here? I gave him more attention than any other kid in that class for the whole school year. And I just wanted to see whether it was he just lost his confidence or whether just he couldn't do maths. And the reason I tell the story, I only tell the stories which work, was that he came top that year. I got him from the bottom of the class to the top of the class just by encouraging him, giving him confidence. Yes, you can do this. Don't be afraid. And so much in life, whatever you do, if you're afraid, of course you will fail. And you don't need to do that. With a bit of more confidence, it's amazing what you can succeed at. And of course, the Buddhist story behind that, and I haven't told this for so many years. If you haven't heard it before, it's a very wonderful story. And that was the only TV show which was remotely Buddhist when I was growing up, was this TV show called Kung Fu. And that was actually the year I was a school teacher. And even though, my fellow school teachers, we talked about all sorts of stuff, and I said I was a Buddhist and I watched this show, and they said, it's Buddhist? I said, yeah, well, sort of. Why is there so much violence in it? Well, that's all they got to show. And I thought it's the violence is what makes it sort of what people would watch. It makes it sort of entertaining, I suppose. But anyhow, this particular episode which always stayed in my mind was of the little monk being trained by the blind master. And the little monk was called Grasshopper, if you remember that name. And little Grasshopper was taken into this very dark room at the back of the temple. And in that dark room it looked like there was a swimming pool there. But it wasn't a swimming pool. It just a big, looks exactly like one. And because the master was blind, he asked little Grasshopper, go and take a look and tell me what you see there. And he said, well, there's lots of liquid there. And at the bottom, there's lots of skulls and bones and bodily stuff. Yes, little Grasshopper, because that isn't water in that little tank, swimming pool size. That is acid, concentrated acid. And can you see that plank of wood going from one side of that tank to the other side of the tank? Yes, 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 master. You will have to walk over that plank from one side of the tank of acid to the other side. And if you fall in, you will just add more bones to the bottom of that swimming pool size tank of acid. And poor old little Grasshopper was scared. And even though I was a young school teacher seeing it on a TV, I was scared too. It's amazing just when you see these things, how you get emotionally drawn into them. And feeling that fear was an important part of this little exercise, why I remembered it, because then he took little Grasshopper outside and said, you have a whole week to train, nothing else you have to do. And there was a plank of wood, the same size, but just on top of 2 bricks on either end. Practice, little Grasshopper, practice. Because in 1 week's time, the test will be real. You'll have to walk over strong, concentrated acid. And if you fall in, I will not be able to help you. So little Grasshopper saw the piece of wood outside, and it was so easy to walk on. He could walk on it blindfold, backwards, whatever. But when the 1 week of training was over, when he was taken into the dark room for the second time, when he was told by his master, get on the end of that piece of wood and cross this big pool of strong, concentrated, deadly acid, he was scared. Me too. I didn't want little Grasshopper to fall in and kill himself. And as he started walking, you could see he was not confident, because a plank of wood of the same size stretched over acid is much longer and much thinner than the same size wood just on 2 bricks in the courtyard. That's how perception works. And so little Grasshopper was walking over the acid, and he could see his fear was starting to make him become unsteady. He started to wobble. He started to shake. He really looked like he was going to fall in. And then you know what happened? Commercial break. Had ads on, stupid ads about washing machine and toothpaste and stuff. And I was wondering what was happening to my friend, little grasshopper. And after the commercial break, they always go back just a little bit earlier than when they actually cut off. And you saw little grasshopper get more unsteady, swaying backwards. It looked like he was losing his balance. And at the very last minute, he fell in. He fell into the pool of acid. You know how kind senior monks are? The senior monk there, the blind master, just burst out laughing. So it's really cool. Poor little grasshopper was burning to death. But he wasn't. The little grasshopper was splashing around. The master was laughing, said it's only water. It's only water. They just put those skulls and bones in the bottom of the pool just for special effects, in order to make it look scary. And then the phrase which he used next was the one which was most important, one I always remember. The master said to Grasshopper, "Why did you fall in, little grasshopper? What pushed you in?" "Fear pushed you in, little grasshopper. Fear pushed you into that water." And that really made a big impression on me. Just how so often in life, it's the fear makes you fall. It's the fear which makes you sick. It's the fear which makes you fail. A lot of times, what you fear the most is actually what you make happen. He was afraid of falling in, so he fell in. And that's something which is powerful, the psychology of even sickness and illness. Of course, now you know where I'm coming from. I'm saying this little talk, that sometimes we have the problem with COVID. It is a problem, and you've got to be careful about it. But a lot of time, it's the fear, which a lot of times it's not mentioned enough. If you think you're going to get COVID, your chances of getting the COVID increase. If you think you're going to fail, your chances of failure increase. If you think you're going to die, sometimes you've seen people, because they feel they're going to die, that's a cause for actually dying. In the Buddhist, almost like cosmology, understanding of the mind and the body, that fear, that lacking, that the French have the best word for it, the joie de vivre, really wanting to live, that can kill a person, the fear. And so we have to be, one thing which you should be afraid of is fear itself. I have been very healthy over many years. And one time when I was very tired, exhausted, and there was one of the parents of some of the people who work for this place and look after this place. Is Gita here this evening? Or Chippy? Oh, you're there. That was your dad. Your dad was a doctor, a medical doctor, and he saw that I was really sick, didn't know why, so he actually admitted me to hospital at the time, in Rockingham Hospital. And what type of medicine did he practice? Gynecology. So I was admitted into hospital for 6 days under a gynecologist. Of course I was wearing my robes because that's all I have. So where's your pyjamas? I don't wear pyjamas, just robes. They're very simple monks. And so they said, well, you've got to have pyjamas in hospital. I said, this is all I've got. You can either have these or nothing. What do you want? And in those days, people were really kind and nice. Said, okay, you can just wear your robes. And wear my robes in hospital. When they're wearing the robes in hospital under a gynecologist, you can imagine what the nurses said. Who are you? You're in the right ward. But one of the things we did in that ward, there was 3 other gentlemen in that ward and a monk. And then, having nothing to do all day, we just had these stupid conversations. And one of the conversations the 4 of us had is what's, because some of them have been in the hospital many times. That was my first time in the hospital for years. And we asked, what's the worst medical procedure? And someone said, oh, this procedure. And I said, no, that's easy. This procedure, no, that's easy. And I think, if I get it right, I don't know if I remember this correctly so many years ago, they said, oh, a barium enema is the worst. And this poor man in the corner, his face went white. He said, that's what I'm having this evening. Stupid way people talk. So don't ever do that. Because fear is something which is probably even worse than some of the diseases itself. Imagine that you're going to get injected by someone and they say, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt, you know. It's really going to hurt. What's your reaction? The reaction, you can understand, you tense up. And because you tense up, it hurts much more. That's one of the problems. Yeah, you've had many occasions when these sorts of things happen. That there's one occasion, walking barefoot in Thailand, and I stepped on a 4-inch nail. It went right through my foot. How many went, ooh, it hasn't gone through your foot, what are you saying that for? And I just looked at it, you see, the one end on the underside of your foot, the other one poking up through your foot. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Actually, it never hurt. It must have got some acupuncture point, I don't know. But it never hurt until the monk with me said exactly what you just said. Ooh, that's terrible. And once he said that, then it started hurting. Why? You can see just how our mental perceptions can add so much onto our experience of life. And again, that is part of fear. That is part of why we have more suffering in life than we need to have. Doing things like having talks, or even somebody asked me the question from Germany. They asked, can you please talk about this? There was of a family trying to have a kid, trying to have a baby, but they've failed so many times. And sometimes that they have tried everything and had miscarriages. Okay, I'm a man, I don't know what it's like to have a miscarriage. I'm a monk as well. But I've met so many people, families have been trying really, really, really hard to have a kid, and these things happen to them. And of course, having been put under a gynecologist in Rockingham Hospital many years ago, I suppose I learnt something about gynecology. Very little. But what you do learn is that sometimes what happens, if a person does manage to get pregnant, their fear of failure, their fear of things going wrong, their fear of having to endure this again, that is something which stops their success. They're afraid. That's one of the reasons why sometimes they do come to monks and we're just chanting for them. It works. Is this powerful, some of the chanting the Buddhist monks can do? Or is it just we're encouraging, giving some confidence, giving some possibilities? Yeah, just because it didn't work last time doesn't mean it's going to not work again. You may fail the first time, give it another chance, who knows? And that encouragement is one way of overcoming fear. And sometimes the reason why these things give you so much suffering and disappointment, big expectations, but in the end, just you think it's failure again. That makes it more likely that you'll fear failure the next time, or won't even go there. So instead of having the fear of failure, let go of the fear and see what happens. That's why sometimes when you do chanting for people, just a blessing, so a monk or somebody they are confident of, when they actually come on and you give them a sort of a good bit of a boost, takes away their fear, give it everything they've got, and sometimes it works. And sometimes they say, oh, what type of chanting did you do? That was amazing. No, we had a kid because of your chanting. I said, no, all my chanting did was to take away your fear, give you confidence, especially it might happen this time, so give it a try. To take away the fear. That was why it worked, more than anything else. Nothing which was supernatural, but everything which was giving you confidence. So the next time you can relax much more. And that's the same in all parts of life. You know that one of the things which many people are afraid of, and I was talking about this last week with a few people, was I live over in a bushfire extreme zone. And we did have a bushfire there on, it was January the 31st. It's almost an anniversary. It's a good time to talk about it. January the 31st, 1991. It was 30 years ago. Yeah, it is. No, it's 31 years ago now. We should have had an anniversary, do something like light some fires or something. No, we can't do that. But Ajahn Jakra was the Abba then, I was number 2. Ajahn Jakra was having some rest and recuperation down south somewhere. So I was in charge there when the big fire came. And on that day, we had in December 45 degrees down in Serpentine, really, really hot. On this day, January the 31st, 46 point something up in Serpentine. Before the fire came. Afterwards, it got quite hotter. So, and that still is the second hottest day in Perth. It was actually the hottest day ever in Perth recorded at the time, but then later on, a week or two later, it was hotter. But imagine that. 46 degrees. And then, in the afternoon, maybe 2 o'clock, one of the Anagarikas came to my hut and said, look at that. A big pall of smoke was rising just off Gobby Road. That's the road south of Kingsbury Drive where we live. We were all ready, all prepared for when that fire came. It was huge. And when it hit the trees, bang, the trees went. Please excuse me for waking you up, but sometimes when you give a talk, when you make it sort of alive, then actually people just, their ears open up a bit more. So, but they exploded. It was like bombs going off. It was amazing to see, really a bit sort of sad to see how nature could be destroyed so quickly, but there was explosions going off. So we were told to evacuate, even though we shouldn't have done that. It was actually when we got to the evacuation point, the head fire brigade guy said that was a mistake, but we were told to do that. Oh yeah, you had to do it. And he told off the bushfire guy who ordered us to. It was a bushfire guy who was scared. There was a couple of the people there at the time were scared too. Because this one gentleman, sometimes when there's emergencies like this, we had all the cars outside. I said, get in the cars, let's drive off. And so one of the guys, he was actually waiting and just coming up. For some reason or another, when we were told to evacuate, he decided that was the time to change his trousers. Honestly, I can't make that story up. It was true. He decided to change his trousers. So he came out, showing off a lot, but with his trousers trying to pull them up. I thought, oh my goodness, who am I? Anyway, so we all got in the cars and we got to the evacuation point. But afterwards, I do also remember that Curtin University sent a group of psychology students to the monastery a couple of weeks later, because they wanted to do like a psychology survey. You'd just been through a very, very, very dangerous fire. And they asked me and a few other monks, said, have you been able to sleep at night after this? Yeah. Have you been waking up in the middle of the night, dreaming about fires? No. Have you got, post-traumatic stress? No. And so they took all their reports and we said, no, this is true, this is what happened. And afterwards I remember just going there and just asking them, said, how did the report go, the research go? He said it was hopeless. We can't use you can't use what you said because it's too anomalous. It's not what's supposed to happen. But I was quite happy about that. You were tested in a life-threatening situation and you weren't afraid. And I think that's a lot of time what saves your life. If you are afraid, you panic, you take down your trousers. Why? I don't know. It could have been any of the monks, because we don't wear trousers, okay, as one of the visitors. Why people panic that much? Because of fear makes them do stupid things. Just like little grasshopper. He fell in only because he was afraid of falling in. So little by little, one thing we should always be aware of is fear. And what is actually fear anyway? A lot of time is fear is we're actually afraid of losing something which is too precious to us. And even in relationships, many people come here, they bring their partners, or sometimes they meet their partners here. It's sometimes in some afternoons or evening it's Dhamma Lanka dating club. I'm being honest. But sometimes, why is it that sometimes people, that when they come together, why don't those relationships actually last? And sometimes, I've seen this, they're so afraid of losing their partner. The fear dominates their relationships, and they do not act sensibly. Even like following their partner, or just always checking her up, or checking him up, just in case. And what happens then is that the fear destroys the relationship. Even in a relationship one-on-one, it does need a lot of trust for that relationship to become good. Also, that relationship to last, when you have that trust, and even allowing people, so now it's, this is your home with us, so it's up to you to make sure you use it the best you possibly can. And also, for those of you who have visited, stayed at Bodhinyana Monastery, we have a large number of monks there. We're never short of monks. And that is quite strange in Australia. Sometimes people say you've cornered the market in monks. You've cornered the market sometimes in nuns. There's more nuns at Dhammasara than any other place. Why? And one of the reasons why is that it's a place where the monks, the novices, the lay people don't feel fear. And those of you who come and stay at Bodhinyana Monastery, or stay at Jhana Grove, or stay at Dhammasara, you don't feel fear. You are trusted. On the recent retreat, which I just finished last Sunday, one of the things which I say, which I often say to people, is that a core rule is to have noble silence. Have you heard that word before on retreats? Noble silence. What it means in Jhana Grove and Bodhinyana Monastery is we don't have any bells. You've heard that before, but thank you for laughing. No bell silence. What that means is you're not woken up in the morning by a big bell going gong, 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 gong. And I often tell people, imagine that was the Buddha, and big bell, bang, bang, bang. He would not have got in line to destroy his samadhi. Samadhi means stillness. How can you have stillness? That is the true meaning of the word. Sometimes people say concentration. It doesn't mean concentration, it means stillness. Anyway, so when we have that stillness there, the noise disturbs it. Why do we have to have bells? Because we don't trust people to get up at the right time. We don't trust people to come to lunch or breakfast at the right time. My goodness, when you only have one meal a day, you know what time lunch is. You never miss that. And same as breakfast if there's breakfast on. You don't need bells. Well, if any of you have been over to Dhammasara or Bodhinyana Monastery, we have all these birds out there, the parrots and the magpies and goodness knows what else. They know exactly the time when the food is available. And people have got a bigger brain than the birds. Some of you. No, all of you. So what that really means, why do people do that? Because fear and control. Do you like being controlled? How does it feel, to be controlled by people? How do you exert that control so people are willing to be controlled by you? Fear. If you don't come on time, you'll be in big trouble. If you don't come on time, things will go wrong. And at that point, any Thai people here today? Any Thais? Okay. This is a great story of Ajahn Sing Tong. Because somebody asked me just the last day of the retreat, can you tell a couple of stories about this Thai forest monk called Ajahn Sing Tong? He died some years ago. But he was a young monk with a very fierce monk called Ajahn Mahabua. Ajahn Mahabua was a well-known meditator, but very, very strict, probably the strictest of the monks in the time when I was a young monk. And so he had a very strict rule in his monastery. If any monk missed the morning meeting, if they didn't come for the chanting and meditation in the morning, that meant they could not go on the alms round. If they didn't go on the alms round, they couldn't eat that day. They had to fast. So anyway, this Ajahn Sing Tong, he got up late. He slept in. And he thought, oh my goodness, the meeting has already started in the morning. That means I will not be able to join the meeting. I will not be able to go on alms round. That means I would have to fast a day. What should I do? The important thing with religions like Buddhism, we call it a religion, is it's always innovative. Use your insight. There's always another possibility somehow or other. So what he did, he was a local lad. In those days, the forest is all around you. When was this? In 1970 something. The forest was all around you. So he went into the forest, and in the morning he managed to find a forest chicken. And he grabbed it. Some of the things you see over there was really amazing. There was one of these, I never saw this, but the other monks I grew up with, they saw this, it's real. There was, when monks were sitting, a cobra, a king cobra, came in to the hall. And it was actually not trying to attack anybody, it was just basically didn't know where it was going, and started moving. And this monk grabbed it. That's what he used to do when he was a lay person. He was a snake catcher. He grabbed it. It's amazing to see that. But anyway, that's not recommended. Please don't practice these things at home. But this, at this particular time, where was I going with this one? Ajahn Singtong, yes. He managed to capture a chicken. Chicken's much safer to capture than a snake. Captured a chicken. He had a rope, and he tied the rope around the chicken's neck and pulled the chicken to the hall. You wonder, why is he doing that? The punchline is coming in a moment. As he was dragging the chicken was making a lot of noise, as chickens would do, as you would do if you've been dragged to the hall early in the morning. Poor chicken. And as soon as they got to the hall, then Ajahn Singtong let the chicken go. But everybody heard that noise. And then after the meeting was finished, they were about to go an alms round. Ajahn Mahabua said, "You came late. You can't go an alms round." And this monk said, No. He said, "Ma gone gai," which is a Thai word. It's an idiom. He said, "No, I came before the chicken." Like what we're saying is before cock crow, which means you got up very early. And it was the idiom meant he got up so early because he came before the chicken crows. Okay, you managed to get it somehow or other. And all the monks laughed. And even Ajahn Mahabua laughed. Okay, you can come on alms round. Is that innovative? But if you're afraid, you can never have innovation. If you're afraid, what will people think of me? Innovation cannot live in such an environment. And so not controlling people is actually very helpful for having peace, happiness, and a sense of being welcome, being part of a community. If you always fear what other people think of you, then of course that fear will stop you performing well in your meditation or in life. So that's one of the reasons why fear just creates so much lack of goodness, achievement, feeling welcome in life, and you can't really contact a person, even sort of physically, emotionally, if there's too much fear inside of you. Even, let's say, going to prisons, many years I spent in jail. Actually, not years spent, well, maybe hours spent in jail, because I had to go visit there teaching the meditation and stuff. I wasn't a convict. I better be careful what I say. But anyway, many times going into the jails, you saw many, many very violent people. And many of those people who were violent was because they were afraid. You didn't have to look very deeply inside of them to actually to give them some friendship. And I do recall many of the stories, some of these prisoners were very, very strong, much stronger than I was. And even though that sometimes you had to be with another prison officer, one of the times I was teaching meditation, the prison officer fell asleep. You know what it's like to meditate sometimes. So the prisoners could have attacked me very easily. And there was one situation where, when I went into the jail, the senior officers, they took me aside and said there's been many assaults, male-on-male rapes. And they said that many of the prisoners got nothing to lose. So they gave me a little biro pen. So please put this in your pocket. If ever you get attacked, please press the pen and it will be an alarm. It will come and save you. Please put it in your pocket. At which point I said to the prison officers, "I'm a monk, I don't have any pockets." "I just hold it in your hand or something." So when I went into my class, the prisoners saw that pen, said, "Oh, you got one of those security alarms too, have you?" And they said to me, "Do you think that you could press that pen before we jumped you and assaulted you? And I was honest with them, because they were actually, believe it or not, honest with me. I said, no, I wouldn't be quick enough. No, you would not be. We could get you before you even thought of pressing that pen. But then that prisoner who asked the question stopped and paused and smiled at me. He said, but, we like you in this jail. You've given us so much kindness that there's a few of us in front here, and if anyone's in the back tried that on you, we'd grab them first. And I must admit, from that time on, actually even beforehand, I felt so safe in that prison, simply because I'd been kind. The kindness is a great protection from all fear. A lot of times it relaxes us. Kindness can relax the body, it can also relax your mind. And when it's relaxed, you don't feel afraid. And the last snake story before I finish was the story of my own preceptor. My preceptor was a very senior monk in Thailand, and he said that I never realized that part of his training, of all monks and nuns' trainings in Thailand, was meditation. And he told me that he would meditate in a coconut grove. And he said once he had a nice deep meditation in a coconut grove, and that when he came out of the meditation, he saw a snake coiled up in his lap. Now what would you feel if you came out of meditation at 8 o'clock and you find a big snake had been coiled up in your lap? How would you react? And this monk, he was my preceptor, and he became the acting Sangharaja of Thailand with lots of responsibility. And this coconut grove was in the island of Koh Samui, when that was not a famous place where tourists went to. That was his hometown in there. But he said the amazing thing was, he was so peaceful. When he came out and opened his eyes, he saw the snake in his lap, coiled up, very happy, and he had no fear at all. And that was really surprising to him. He thought, how can this happen? No fear. And of course he just watched the snake for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then the snake just uncoiled and just slithered away with, you can imagine, gratitude, simply because he had no fear. If he had fear, maybe the animal would have sensed that and had bitten him. Because he was no fear, he was perfectly safe. Have ever you had occasions like that, that in your life you haven't had any fear at all, you've seen someone come up to you who was very dangerous, or an animal come up who was very dangerous, and you find your confidence actually saved you from injury? Many times I've seen that happen. And many times wondrous things happen when you don't have that fear. Wondrous things happen, like animals come up to you and they're not afraid at all. One of the Anagarikas was sitting over in the area of Jhana Grove some years ago, sitting very peacefully but with his eyes open, and an emu came up to him. And I've seen emus before, but they're always this very scary animal. No, they're scared. They run all over the place. But this monk, or monk-to-be one day, he was sitting there not perfectly still, he had his eyes open, but really calmly. And the emu had never seen a human being like this before. So the emu came right up to him. The Anagarika never moved. And the emu just put its beak on this Anagarika's nose, almost like a kiss. Just smell it. What is this? Have you ever been kissed on the nose by an emu? A wild one, not sort of tamed or anything. And of course then the emu just very hopped away, just very gracefully and calmly. It's so wonderful when you don't have fear. The animals don't have fear against you. And you can walk very peacefully and calmly through life. So fear is the problem. To overcome that fear, relax. Do more meditation, make your mind peaceful. And you find the fear gets less and less and less. And you find that you're very safe in life, much safer than you thought. And it means you have monasteries where people feel safe being there, which means that they don't feel tense all the time. When you don't feel tense, you don't make so many mistakes. Okay, so that's it. I want it. Can I tell a joke? Yes. Thank you. There's, well, one of the main jokes about the man. Have you ever been to the autopsy rooms? You haven't? Well, there's this coroner was called in to look at one of these dead people, because the dead person, would you be scared? But anyway, the dead person had a big smile on his face. And that's really rare to see someone who's dead with a big smile on their face. So they asked what was the cause of death. And it was even more strange, because the cause of death, he'd been struck by lightning. Why was he smiling? They said because he thought he was having his photograph taken. Okay, come on, you can laugh. Okay, I think I'll quit while I'm ahead. So, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, another thing not to try at home. Okay, we've got a few questions here, so let's see what we've got. Very good. Thank you. 7 questions. Okay, I'm going to do number 7 first of all. Jurgen from USA. I feel fear when I'm in a difficult situation. How can I avoid blaming myself for feeling fear and therefore making my situation worse? Yeah, you're afraid of being afraid. So one of the nice things to do is, with fear, it means you've got nothing to lose. It's a nice thing about being a monk. Don't own anything. What you got to lose? So, same if I die. Imagine if you die in an aircraft explosion. It's much better than cancer, isn't it? I say why it's better than cancer. This is one of the reasons why. I told a story years ago about if you die in an aircraft explosion, to get shot down or something, there are 3 benefits. The 3 benefits of dying are 30,000 feet up in the air. The first benefit, it's an instant death. So there's no pain or no problem there at all. Just bang and that's it. So it's pain-free. Number 2 is instant. That's actually 4 benefits. Instant cremation. Oh, come on, be realistic. Sometimes, there's a backlog of people needing to be sort of cremated. I've seen that happen, because I've done many cremations, and we can't do it today. We have to do it sort of on Monday or Tuesday or something, public holiday or whatever. This is done on the spot. Number 3, what do you do with the ashes? This is a big problem we're just talking about even today over in Bodhinyana Monastery. All the spaces in the wall are getting full, and sometimes in the ground there's no place to put your ashes. You think, what are we going to do next? But if it's an aircraft explosion, your ashes are scattered automatically. And the best part of this... Oh no, it's actually 2 more benefits. Keep remembering as I go along. Honestly, how expensive are funerals? This is not just for free. It is, you get money back from this. With the insurance, the aircraft company gives you a big compensation. But the best part of it, not the finances. Finances are so worldly. Spiritually, imagine dying at 30,000 feet. you're so close to heaven. It's easy to go the rest of the way. So why are people being afraid of being blown up in the air? So, difficult situation. The fear makes it more difficult. So how to avoid blaming yourself? Oh look, don't blame yourself for anything. You can actually blame, your teachers, blame your parents, blame your culture for not teaching you just how to be more peaceful in life. In other words, a difficult situation, how can I avoid blaming myself? It just live in the present moment, let go of the fear. You've got nothing to lose. My son is finishing high school. He is bright but worried about his future, that he's not going to make it. He thinks college fee will put burden on his mum. I try to encourage him that everything will be fine. Any advice? Thank you. Think of all the people who didn't get to university or dropped out, including Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs, Michael Dell, Bill Gates. These are all billionaires. So maybe sending your son to university will stop him from becoming a billionaire. And then you'll have to work, your parents will have to work for the rest of their life. That's true, So see the positive side about his worries about his future. Poor son. I don't know, he's just finishing high school. He's already starting to worry about his future. He's not going to make it. Look, tell your son if he doesn't make it, he can have a wonderful life. I know many monks over in Indonesia. I could find you a place in their monasteries. So you could be happy ever after without having to worry about passing more exams. Isn't it the case you pass one exam, you have to do another one later on? There's no end of them. So if you fail your exams early on in your life, you're much more free. Parents hate me saying things like that to this class. You never heard that, did you, Shanti? No, you didn't hear that. About failing exams. Edie from Indonesia. For 5 precepts, number 1 precept is do not kill. What is the Buddha view on being a vegetarian? If someone goes to a restaurant and chooses those living sea animals, that person ordered the killing for eating. Is that considered killing? Yeah, it is considered killing if you go and order those live animals in the restaurants. That's why, isn't it? Sometimes I've been to restaurants and you've seen some of those animals in those like not aquariums, those small tanks. And sometimes they're like lobsters. Have you ever seen the lobsters? They actually point to each other and say, take him, take him. Take that one. No, it's not very nice to see. So it's much better to, if you want to be a vegetarian, fine. Vegan, fine. But when I was a Buddhist, last year, before I left university, that I asked my friends, how did you feel about me being a Buddhist when you weren't? And they said, we respected you. You respected me because I never told anyone to be a Buddhist. I was actually a vegetarian at that time, and I never told anyone else to be a vegetarian. I didn't drink alcohol. I never told anyone else not to drink alcohol. Because I wasn't forcing my ideas on anybody else, that gave much more credibility to what I was doing. So they're saying, whatever you decide to do in your life, how you decide to eat, that is your decision. Don't criticize others. Smitha. It appears that my mother is winding down. She's getting desperate, impatient to leave this world. She wants me to pray that she can leave soon. Please guide me on how to handle the situation. It depends actually what's happening with your mother, how old she is. But one of the most beautiful times of my monastic life was being with people and seeing someone really, really suffering and telling their closest relations, their loved ones, have you told your mother, or have you given your mother permission to die yet? So you go up to your mum, or your dad, your loved one, your husband, your wife, or whatever, and say, it's okay to die. I give you permission. Don't feel you're going to keep on struggling to be alive for the sake of me. I don't want you to suffer anymore. I've seen that so many times, being on people's bedsides, and getting the wife to go up to the husband and give him permission to go. It's a very beautiful, very emotional, very sensitive. It's from cases like that I always say the greatest act of love is to let someone go with your blessing. But also against that, you have sometimes surprising results from giving people permission to go. Like this young Rhodes scholar who I grew up with in Thailand. He was so fit and so smart, and he was like a wrestler, but also Rhodes Scholar means you go to Oxford University. Really smart fellow. But when he was in Thailand, he got really, really sick, very close to death. We sent him over to our monastery in England, thinking that might be of service to him, help him. But he just was in his room for about 2 or 3 years without being able to get out of his room. And one day, one of the monks went up there and said to him, on behalf of all the people who've been looking after you all these years, all the people who care about you and love you, I've come up here on behalf of everybody to give you permission to die. Stop trying to get healthy. Stop trying to please others by trying this and trying that to get rid of the sickness. And like that, this Rhodes scholar, he's a champion wrestler over in, he was from Tennessee. He used to speak this wonderful South American drawl as a monk. Southern States of America drawl. And a very nice fellow. And he just wept. Because he'd been trying so hard to get better. That literally was causing him to be sick. From that day on, he started to improve in his health. That was so many years ago, maybe 35 years ago. He's still alive. Once he got permission to die, he kept on living. That's a strange thing. It's actually fear. This was the fear of upsetting and causing suffering and grief to the people he cared about. That fear was what was keeping him from getting better and keeping him from dying, putting him in this terrible prison of sickness. From Sri Lanka, Ajahn Brahm, I'm having anxiety and it triggers my phobias. I'm scared of spotty patterns and spikes. I always notice them around me. Even looking around is unpleasant. Please advise. Again, the best thing to do is to close your eyes and do some meditation when you get very, very peaceful. You'll find those things don't hurt you as much. They don't harm you. They don't scare you as much. The mind gets more resilience after it's been peaceful. And that resilience, the best simile I've ever come up with for resilience, a guitar string. Remember, guitar string is very taut. It's under pressure from both ends, under stress. Something hits it, bing! It makes a loud noise. You loosen the tension on both ends, bing! It's total loss of tension on both ends. It's very loose. You can hit it, nothing makes it resound. Small things, you say, like spikes or like, what's the other thing? Spotty patterns trigger some sort of reaction. It seems to be an overreaction. It's because you're already so tense. You can loosen that tension. Who knows that might be able to overcome the extreme anxiety.